Okay, here it is, guys. Mr. Iain Donnelly, the big man from Scotland, who passed away a little while ago. But before he did, I managed to record him talking at his book launch in Bangkok. I recovered the audio, the video I don't have, but the audio I have, so we can remember the big man with him talking here about Phnom Penh, his work as an author, as a writer, as a DJ, as a supporter of the arts in the region of South East Asia. So, take it away, Iain Donnelly.
Right, neat sounds to sometimes.
I wouldn't say as much. I'm saying, the Romans, because the opening, passage one could away is all about that. Is it all about, you would think of Phnom Penh as being a pretty city. If somebody said to you, pick one of the beautiful cities in the world, you'd say Venice or whatever, or Prague, or Budapest, or whatever. You'd hardly pick Phnom Penh. I mean, it is, putting it mildly, it's a shithole.
It is.
But you scratch. It's the opposite way round of you normally scratch something nice and find the dark underbelly. It's with Phnom Penh you scratch the darkness and you find light. And where I think really encapsulates that is on the riverside round about dusk, where you have all the families gathered together and playing shuttlecock or having a picnic or playing badminton or whatever. And that is when you find the pretty side of Phnom Penh.
How about if you encapsulate Siem Reap as a beautiful place but a dark underbelly because of the tourism problem?
The dark underbelly would be very small, and it'd probably be centred around Scotsman Road, which is the haunt of the sexpats and the sex tourists and things. But
which
it's very small.
Is it really still small?
Yeah, I mean, compared to other cities. I mean, Siem Reap, if I remember rightly, the actual city only has less than 200,000 population.
And they have in the tourists. Before 2019, there were loads of them.
I mean, most of the tourists that come to Siem Reap aren't sex tourists. Sex tourists go to Phnom Penh.
Okay.
Because there's 104, there's 136, there's whole, same as Bangkok, there's whole girly bar districts. With Siem Reap, you have this little stretch on Scotsman Road, which is maybe 15 bars at most. There's probably more girly bars in Kampot now. Kampot's gone. It's no longer the placid little seaside town or riverside town that you spent time in. But Siem Reap is very much about tourist visiting for the anchor park.
How about Sihanoukville? How does that compare?
Well, that's Chinese now.
Really?
Oh, completely. Yeah. I mean, gone in the backpackers, gone on the dirt roads. It's now kidnappings and rapes and murders and Chinese mafia. And what's worse is China has got rid of the scum of the scum. They've sent all the bottom feeders to Sihanoukville. The good gangsters have stayed in China. But yeah, Sihanoukville's quite
It's not your choice of place to stay.
Oh God, no. I mean, it's where I first lived in Cambodia, but that was before the Chinese arrived.
Can you find yourself seeing any inspiration in Sihanoukville, or
no,
where will your next inspiration be coming
from?
No,
like Thailand, you sometimes have to tread carefully when you're writing. You'll know this as a journalist. In Thailand, you have to be careful what you say about the religion, what you have to say about the royal family. In Cambodia, you have to be careful what you say about the royal family. Sorry, you have to be careful what you say about the government, then the royal family, but then the Chinese as well, because they're pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into it.
Have a lot of influence.
Yeah. So I always tread very carefully with my writing. In the Anchor series, I had a very progressive, forward-looking Minister of the Interior who supported the let's pull ourselves into the 21st century, etc., etc. So I'm always very careful because at the end of the day, I'm a guest there.
We all are.
And it just takes 1 month for me to turn up to renew my visa, and it comes back rejected, and then I have a matter of weeks to get out of the country.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm always nice.
So it's the overall censorship issues.
It's not so much as the main censorship in Cambodia is Cambodian on Cambodian. There's a very burgeoning underground environmental movement because the rate of deforestation in Cambodia is terrifying. They're selling a lot of the timber over to the Vietnamese. There's a place just outside Sihanouk, Reem National Park, it was a national park. It was an area of beautiful. I mean, literally, you could go and ride along the roads, and you'd see eagles and monkeys and snakes. You'd see everything. But now huge chunks of that have been sold off to the Chinese, despite it being a national park. So you now have resorts and the people who've been living there for generations, living off the land or living off the sea, have been told to bugger up.
With the national parks in Cambodia, do they have dual pricing like they do in many places?
Oh no,
in
this
Thailand?
you just drove into it.
No problem. No
There is
dual
obviously
pricing.
there is dual pricing for the Angkor Park, but Cambodians get in free.
But
Which
what
is fair
about,
enough.
like yourself, you're a resident?
Oh well, because I've been there for more than 2 years, I'm free as well.
How do they realise that you can get into these places for free?
Because
Yeah.
I go and apply for a special pass that
Okay.
says I can get in for free. I show 2 years worth of visas and they go, right, you can get in for
You're
free.
going to borrow it?
No, because it's got my picture on it and though we both black
Okay.
hair.
We don't look very
No,
similar.
no.
So, you've written how many books about Seth?
Right,
There's
this
two
is
that I know
my-
of, but at least 3, right?
Right, this is my 6th fiction novel. Then there's the collection of stories which I edited but also contributed to.
Yeah.
So, and there's some non-fiction work as well.
3 Angkor.
There's, yeah,
3 Angkor.
the 3 Anchor series. My first book was Electric Iron Brew Acid Test,
Yeah.
which is a sort of coming of age story, which is semi-autobiographical, and which there will be another 2 parts eventually. Then there came Anchor Away, and then Anchor Tears, and Anchor Cloth, Anchor Gold, which I don't have copies of here. And then the spin-off from the Anchor series was The Real Thing, which sort of features the characters in those 3 Anchor books, but more focuses on I wanted a really strong female character. Cambodia is a sort of like, there's a contradiction there that within family life there's a very strong matriarchal structure. But if you actually look at the corporate world and government, it's mainly men, of course. So I wanted this inspirational female character, which a couple of NGOs that work with girls actually took copies off me and said, we absolutely love the book because it's a female character outperforming her male counterparts.
Yeah.
And then this is sort of like off a tangent, yeah.
Yeah. When did you write Real?
The real thing was
Real
released
Thing.
December 2021. I've not.
During COVID problems?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what I said. I started this before COVID, but I didn't have an ending in my head, so I put it aside
And
and
did
I
the
went
Real
to work
Thing?
on The Real Thing. And The Real Thing, I'm currently I've never really marketed it as a book because
You know
I want a production company.
With
to
The
make it.
Real Thing, sometimes the most important thing for a writer in a magazine is the headline. For a title for a book, The Real Thing is a fucking great idea.
And
You
it's
thought of that yourself.
RIEL.
You thought of that?
It's RIEL.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
why
that's
he
what
reckons it's
I'm
good.
saying.
Real.
Of course I thought of
I know,
it.
yeah.
I'm sure
No,
there
it's
is
great,
James.
the real thing, REAL.
Yeah,
There must be
yeah.
tons of them, but
It's a
yeah.
band.
I actually, but I'm
Recently.
Yeah,
People from this part of the
amusing,
world,
even
The
better
Real
than
Thing
the-
is a fucking great fucking idea for a title.
when the book was released,
It's a heist
I
story.
did actually have somebody comment on a post regarding it saying, "Imagine writing a whole book and you can't spell the title correctly." And I actually had to.
Nice.
Please read the following very slowly.
Yeah.
Real as a Cambodian currency.
Look at
It's a play
fucking
on words.
Google or something.
Yeah, you've not done the most basic.
Easy mistakes.
I mean, actually,
What you got to call them?
somebody thinking that you'd
The
written
most
whatever,
basic thing to be a writer is fucking doing
65,000
research,
words
man.
and
Title wrong.
you screwed up the title.
So you did,
Did
the
you like
three-
that title,
three
The
Angkor.
Real Thing?
Yeah.
It's good, yeah, it's clever.
Then you did
Smart.
The
then
Real
you did
Thing.
Real, and now you've done this.
Yeah.
Did you? What's the word? Was it a conscious decision to move away from?
No, it wasn't.
The Angkor
I'd
series?
always wanted. I mean,
He always wanted to write an eco thriller.
no, quite. I'd always wanted. Remember when you were a kid, you always had a hero or what you wanted to be when you grow up. You know,
I
want to
never
be an
thought
astronaut.
that. Never
Yeah.
thought that.
I want to be an astronaut. Or you had a hero, it might be a footballer, it might be whatever. My hero from about the age of 10 was Sam Spade. Bogart, but more Spade, more like
Yeah.
the Spade written in the Hammett bit. And I always wanted to do something that sort of paid homage to Hammett. And that was, I had this original, when I had this idea originally, it was, you know, someday the world had gone to shit, and this guy basically withdraws into the persona of Sam Spade. He's called Sam Smith. And there's a few twists and turns in there as well. I won't go into. I actually contacted the Hammett estate before I realised that all his work was in the public domain and said, can I basically use the cat? And said no. And then I did some more research and found out all his work's in the public domain anyway, so it doesn't matter what you say. It's like, so yeah, I mean, it wasn't so much a conscious decision to move away because there is going to be a follow-up to the real thing. The real thing is book 1 of the Apsara Chronicles.
Yeah.
So there are going to be another 2 books featuring Sophia Chang. But I want to do this.
Why did you choose the diaspora or the problems of the world now when in the future there's going to be a...
Well, I mean, one, I think it would be very topical. Obviously, you know, people are constantly, you see extreme weather events in the news nearly every day now. Climate change, I think, has reached...
How much research did you do on that?
We're living in an extreme weather
What?
event.
How much research did you do
Lots.
on that?
I for all my books, I mean, if you read any of my books, I've had somebody the other day who actually sort of messaged me and said, you know, the amount of realism that's in that book is amazing. Now,
I agree.
When I wrote Anchor Tears, now Anchor Tears is about child trafficking and child sexual abuse. Now, even with a social work background, I really wanted to be sure that I did it right. So I did, as well as the additional research into human trafficking.
Yeah.
I sent the manuscript to the head of one of the biggest NGOs in Cambodia, Nalok Tapang, who's a child protection specialist, and she thought it was amazing. And I was also very careful. I took a Hitchcock approach. There's nowhere in that book where you will read about a child being abused. It's all implied, because I didn't want it to be. I didn't want to end thinking it was bad taste. So as I say, I had, you know, one, she checked it for me and read over it very carefully, and then wrote a marvellous review later. And number 2, just I made sure that throughout the book there's nothing actually happens, it's all implied. Because I wanted people to think about it. I mean, everybody looks at Asia, stroke South East Asia, and thinks, oh, child sex and human trafficking. But the problem's actually bigger in places like the USA. You know, there's one of the things that came up in my research was where you have these interstates and the highways. Every time there's a major intersection, a big truck stop, that's a major human trafficking hub. It's where truckloads and all you see in the news. I mean, all you see in the news is Cambodia, Thailand, the Philippines. But the fact is, it's human. General modern slavery is now bigger than it ever was in human history. There's more than, if I remember my figures, there's more than
Mostly
40.
located in Central,
There's
Southeast Asia.
every country.
Southeast Asia.
I mean, outside Antarctica, every country in the world has a modern
Really?
slavery problem. I mean, you go to America and there's Vietnamese nail salons. You go to the UK.
And you found this out through your research, right?
Well, research and personal experience.
Okay.
I mean, I because I worked in criminal justice as well. I had quite a few Vietnamese growers who were kept locked in a house for months and end. Their only job was to tend the plants. Because when you're trafficked from Vietnam to the UK, you then owe the traffickers $10,000, and you have to work that $10,000 off. So yeah, I did a lot of research for Anchor Tears. I do a lot of research for every book, but I did especially for that. Because some of the figures shock me. There's more than 40 million people worldwide who are in modern slavery conditions now.
So I think what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to dive into Bangkok Drowning
Yeah.
and read a passage or two.
I hope this is one with place marks now.
Do you have subtitles for Ian's accent?
My accent.
I
isn't
will.
that bad.
I've found a really good because I'm doing this documentary about this Irish guy at the moment who speaks very quickly.
This is
Most of them do.
there's an
Have you
exponential
seen
increase
this guy
in
called Joseph? He's
Which
got
Joseph?
big white beard and white hair,
I have seen him on.
and he looks like Jesus Christ. Have you
I've
seen
seen
this
him.
guy?
I've seen him.
Yeah.
I've been following him around with a camera, and
Yeah, I saw a photo of last week with him. Yeah. And you've done an interview with him now.
we've done a few pieces.
He looks an interesting guy.
Barney style one.
Yeah.
He looks an interesting guy. Is he interesting?
He thinks he's Jesus reborn. I mean, how more interesting can you get? It's brilliant.
But Jesus had a brown beard, not a black white one.
He's got a big white fluffy beard like Santa
It's
Claus.
old Jesus then.
No, it's
Don't
old
be
Jesus.
picky.
No, I'll cut this out, don't worry, we'll go. Now, reading from Bangkok Drowning is Stephen Palmer.
Okay, I'll start
In
with
your
you,
own
Palmer.
time.
in
Stephen
my own
W.
time.
Palmer.
Stephen
Yes.
W. Palmer.
Yes, thank you.
What's W stand for, by the way?
I don't know. Somebody suggested last week.
Stephen
that-
Wanker Palmer.
Yeah, well, that is exactly what somebody suggested.
Palmer.
I just thought it stood out better with the middle initial, and for some reason I just chose.
Well, I have to
W.
agree with you. Rob W's a very good middle.
Stephen
middle
Palmer,
Robert
William
W. Martin.
Power has a certain more
Wilfred.
regal feeling to it.
Yeah. Okay, in your own time.
I'm just conscious that Gary's going to come back.
He's going to come back and
Walk in
completely
front.
ruin the shot, isn't
Yeah,
he?
that's what I'm worried about.
Or is he hovering? Is
Gary hovering.
Is Gandhi
He might be
hovering?
in the toilet. I don't know.
Could wait for him to return on.
We can wait
Wait for him to
return.
come back. Yeah. Call Ignan why dad Ignan Delka.
He's in there working out what the W means.
Something happened.
I think we
W
worked
C.
out
Yeah,
what
yeah,
the
I want to
W
clear
is.
this one out of your visual. This one.
You do actually use the same guy, say it.
Absolutely.
Of course he
absolutely,
is.
yeah.
Oh, he walked behind the camera like a clipper boy as
Look at
well.
that. But in front of the
Are you
projector.
going to read?
Ah.
Are you going to read a
I'm gonna-
passage as well?
No,
I'm not, no, I'm
No.
just going to...
Why don't you read the passage as well?
because he didn't bloody write it.
Okay, but okay, a different,
And I've never even read it
viewpoint,
before.
a different.
But he's not ready yet.
localisation.
He's not ready yet. So
Actually, yeah, it's a good idea. But how many passages are you going to do?
I'm just going to do a couple.
Okay,
I'm
good.
not going to bother them.
You've already chosen them, right?
We can do more of a Q&A session.
Chosen already?
Yes.
Good.
Thanks, Dad.
You check the camera was rolling, yeah? And
No, I just avoided it.
Is it rolling? Do we know that?
It's constantly rolling. He's going to edit it later.
Okay.
But it
Just edits you out
switches
completely.
itself off
Oh, that's
to
fine.
get
That's fine.
to
No problem. No problem. You're the main man.
10 minutes.
Huh? You still okay?
The battery's not run out yet.
No, battery's good. She's 10 minutes on. So we've got half an hour in the can so far.
Thank
Okay.
you. Come from Cal.
I'll start with
Thank
the
you, man. Cheers.
I'll start with the prologue. The prologue is very much heavily borrowed from Hammett, from the opening of Maltese Falcon. I've obviously sort of translated it for the more modern setting. And this is where the Hammett meets Blade Runner bit comes from as well.
Okay.
Blue neon crackle invades the room, thrusting unwelcome hollow-eyed echoes into his little refuge of anachronistic nostalgia. The flickers creep across the walls, illuminating posters of long-forgotten films before their probing fingers find their way to the figure behind the desk. Samuel Smith's jaw was prominent, an angular and unwanted extrusion in her face that in other circumstances, and with fewer angles, may have been called handsome. That jaw took attention away from a slim, almost feminine mouth, and a well-proportioned nose swept upwards to meet a patrician brow, sheltering grey eyes that had seen far too much. His shadow on the wall behind him seemed to jump in fright as there was a knock on his door, an unexpected and possibly imagined reaction to an expected and pre-appointed action. The knock on the office door and the secretary entered. He smiled at Honey McIntosh and said, "Yes, sweetheart." She was the definition of unknowing sexiness, all curves and perfectly curled lips, yet she was blissfully unaware that her body had been worshipped by ancient cultures, and that it was now admired and lusted after by anything with a heartbeat. Sam had been struck by her resemblance to Greta Garbo, not that she had any idea who that was, when she had answered his optimistic ad for a secretary 2 years previously. Despite her lack of experience and any proficiency in anything related to secretarial skills, Sam had hired her on the spot, more for the fact that her retro look suited his eccentric view of life than for any hope of her being good at the job. Her typing skills still hadn't improved, though Sam suspected that was a deliberate protest at his insistence she used an antique machine from the 1950s. But she had proven herself an able assistant in every other way, not to mention her grade 1 charm in dealing with clients and potential clients. Sam had convinced himself in the early days of their working relationship that they were destined to become lovers. His initial workplace flirting, responded to in kind, had raised those hopes higher, only to be cruelly dashed against the rocks of rejection when he took her for martinis one balmy summer evening. When his hand had rested on her leg for longer than the 10 seconds allowed by etiquette, she had looked him straight in the eyes. "Sam, darling, I do love you to bits, but I'm more of an XX type of girl, and you're simply too heterogometic for my tastes." Sam hadn't understood her references. Well, not until he checked the dictionary in his apartment later, but he knew a flat-out rejection when he heard one. He'd expected awkwardness the next day in the office, but instead she'd returned to the vivacious flirt of before, and Sam realised she'd adopted this work-based persona to fit in with his own quirky ways. Now they were the best of friends, though her svelte form often wandered unbidden into his dreams in the heat of the night. So that is the introduction. I have actually thought about this and put some place markers. Just trying to think.
How much of your writing is subjective or personal experience?
Well, given this a sort of dystopian sci-fi, very little of this is experience. I mean,
Imagination?
It's mostly imagination, of course. Any fiction writer.
Experience plus imagination.
Yeah. I've drawn an experience in previous books and stories, but this was more my love of Hammett. It was the seed.
That's your Hammett.
Yeah. That was the seed that gave birth to this book. I'm obviously drawing my experience and travelling and living in the region, so, you know.
Please carry on, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Right, I'll jump forward a bit. This is Sam arriving in Thailand. As a Lockheed BA S-120 descended towards Phitsanulok Airport, Sam looked down the visual juxtaposition of endless green fields stretching to the south and the gloomy modern city to the north. Phitsanulok had been developed rapidly to meet the needs of a country in shock and almost bankrupt. The reconstituted UN had seen to that all countries in need of rebuilding had served the cash or materials and services to ensure speedy reconstruction or new development were needed. With the Thai royal family contributing most of its wealth to the rebuilding efforts, Phitsanulok was a thriving modern city. Modern canals crisscrossed the city, all eventually linking up with the mighty Nan River, which wound its way down from the Lang Prabang range straddling the Thai and Lao border, before linking with the Ping River and becoming the Chao Phraya. Before the sea levels had risen, the Chao Phraya had reached all the way to the Gulf of Thailand. But now, with Bangkok mostly submerged, the water surrounding the former capital was now called Krungtep Lake. Sam stretched his legs and looked around him. Most of the passengers looked like either business people or holidaymakers. Even in this new and improved world, people wanted to see the effects of the disasters that had racked the planet. Or maybe they just wanted to see the changes and improvements. Or maybe they just wanted to visit countries they could only have dreamed of visiting before. Sam didn't really care. He'd spent a portion of the journey going over the information he had collated in Bangkok and Simpad. He'd given the city little thought since leaving, though melancholy thoughts of Walter often arose in modern solo evenings of drinking whiskey. By the time he'd left Bangkok, Zed had the city council well established, and the first digital elections had taken place, with some representatives from surrounding districts replacing the group members who had steered the councils in its early days.
I have, to be brutally honest, I haven't read the book yet. I'm just about to purchase it, and I'm curious about the kind of logistics of how you organise a city that's slowly or rapidly underwater, or becoming underwater,
Becoming submerged.
becoming submerged. So you've got.
See, one of the beauties of Bangkok, and I use that word ironically, is that one, you have lots of tall buildings. Two, you have an elevated transport system. So while street level in
Yeah,
this Bangkok is underwater, the tides have adapted as they often do. So if we were sitting here, you'd see long tails going past outside. And what's happened with the elevated, the BTS lines is they're now walkways. They're now the pavements of the city.
Okay.
And then the city council.
The same way the Klongs became roads.
Yes.
The sky.
Yeah. So
trailers
it's almost like things have swapped round.
So how about the class divide is what I'm interested in. So first of all, I'm thinking people who live on the ground, i.e. the poorer people, will be most affected, whilst those living up high in the high rises will be least affected. But if there's a food chain supply problem, maybe the people on the ground have more of an advantage, having been from like rural areas and being able to
But what's
catch
happened
food and make rafts, and they're more practical.
is the rich have abandoned Bangkok.
They've left. Okay, so
The
it's
government
left
have
to the
abandoned
poor.
Bangkok. So it's been left. I think there's a passage in there. It's been left to the people who can't afford to leave, and to
Wow,
the people who
okay.
see an opportunity. So in the early days of the new Bangkok, there's various warring gangs, from the benign to the outright nasty. So that's part of the first half of the book is dealing with these
Civil
warring
unrest.
factions. Yeah. So you have the ordinary Thais who are struggling to survive on a daily basis. Then you have these different gangs, some of whom are trying to drive Bangkok forward, some of whom are just trying to make as much out of it and have as much power as possible.
But there's no political control. It's,
Not in the early stages. I mean, later there's a very democratic council. But in the early days, it's anarchy. Not good anarchy either. It's chaos.
It's definitely fiction then.
Yeah.
Well,
I think there's.
Psychic powers.
I'm just going to read a little short bit from the back. This is from John Burdett, who's probably one of the best writers writing in Thailand. In a few short decades, rising water levels will have flooded all cities at sea level and the world population will have shrunk. But that won't stop a drowning Bangkok from doing what it does best: waterborne drugs, sex and violence. Bangkok Drowning does for the Oriental City of Angels what so many prophets have done for LA, a welcome and original take on our collective destiny. And it was only a medium-sized check I had to send to John for that.
well, he's getting older and a bit, it's a bit
Yeah,
different a bit.
But it's good having sort of like something like that from.
So what's the case? Because Sam, from reading the introduction there and the meat of the book, he's just deriving.
If we put aside.
What's the assignment for the main
assignment,
character?
the reason Sam has to return to Bangkok is to retrieve a very special mind chip. Now, one of the positives that comes from the dieback and from the rising sea levels is countries start working together. So we have, say, Joe over there with one part of the puzzle and Gary over there with another part of the puzzle, and for years they've been sitting in the labs struggling to and all of a sudden things start coming together. So
They connect.
Yeah, there's a massive advances in science, and sort of scientists invented this thing called a mind chip that basically can implant memories. So rather than you sitting with your PlayStation 5, you can have this mind chip implanted, and you can go and actually be in a war zone and shoot
So
people.
like a Neuralink
Yeah,
kind of.
but he has then further developed it where it has the potential to download memories. So if you die, we could download your memories, but there's a very limited time gap.